Hey guys, tonight we're dropping you right into the thundering roar of September 1st, 1939, as German panzers breach the Polish border under a slate-grey dawn. The air tastes of cordite and fear, as you trudge along a muddy road fringed by flattened crops and hastily abandoned farm carts. You can almost feel the tread of Tiger tanks, gleaming steel beasts barreling toward Warsaw, engines growling like mechanical beasts. It's not a scene for the faint of heart, though, let's be honest, you probably won't survive this without a healthy dose of caffeine and a solid pair of boots. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know who's listening in from bomb shelters or cozy armchairs tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The ground shakes beneath your feet as the Luftwaffe Stukas roar overhead, dive-bombing Polish defensive positions with uncanny precision. You squint upward through the thickening smoke, praying you're clear of falling shrapnel. This is the first full-scale use of blitzkrieg, or lightning war, a tactic combining air power, fast-moving armor, and compressed infantry thrusts to shatter enemy lines before they can regroup. The mainstream fact is simple: within weeks, Poland was overrun, and Europe's fragile peace lay in tatters. You duck into a shallow foxhole as a platoon of Panzer III's churn past. You're told they each weigh about 19 tons and can top out at 25 miles per hour on smooth roads, an astonishing speed for 1939. You can't help but marvel at that mechanical wonder, even as your adrenaline spikes. But some folks claim German tanks were actually slowed by swampy fields, forcing them onto beaten paths that funneled them straight into Polish artillery traps. Historians still argue whether terrain hampered the panzers more than their own tactical overconfidence, but for you, it's all about staying alive long enough to ponder the textbooks later. A shell screams overhead, and you cover your ears, teeth rattling. The soldiers around you start joking in dark humor. One cracks, "Anyone got a spare helmet?" Mine's full of crumpled letters. People cope with absurdity any way they can. You nudge your companion, who's nursing a blistered foot, and ask if she's heard the story of Polish cavalry charging tanks. Yes, the fringe tidbit. For decades, popular lore insisted that mounted units galloped bravely at German armor, lances lowered. In reality, that myth likely sprang from the retreating cavalry's engagement with reckoned troops on motorcycles, not panzer divisions. Yet the image persists: soldiers on horseback versus steel juggernauts, an odd, cinematic snapshot of doomed valor. You exchange a wry smile with your comrade, both of you wondering how many more myths will swirl around this conflict in years to come. Meanwhile, wounded soldiers stagger past, each carrying a rifle or a rifle butt, some leaning on crutches or makeshift slings. You help one medic load a stretcher beneath a wooden cattle car, bound for the rear lines or a hospital train. The smell of infection hangs in the air, mingled with engine oil and the sweet tang of spilled gasoline. Life continues in this toxic stew, routines ticking like clocks: load the wounded, feed the hungry, bury the dead. Even as the Wehrmacht breaches the Vistula River line, Polish defenders refuse to yield without a fight. You catch a glimpse of a 19-year-old volunteer, barely taller than his rifle, eyes bright with defiance, shouting orders to a group of terrified conscripts. It's stirring, and maybe a little foolish, but it speaks to human resilience amid mechanized brutality. You can almost feel his adrenaline, that surge of purpose, even though death might be minutes away. Historians still debate whether Poland's early resistance altered Hitler's timetable significantly. Some argue that stubborn pockets of defense slowed the German advance, allowing Britain and France to mobilize and declare war, an outcome perfidious Albion would frame as solidarity. Others point out that without substantial tank reserves and anti-tank guns, Poland's efforts, however brave, were doomed to collapse. For you, tramping through ruined villages and shell-pocked fields, the strategic calculus barely registers. You only know that each thunderous noise sends your heart into overdrive. The battle drags on into the afternoon. You find shelter in the remains of a brick farmhouse, its windows shattered and roof splintered. A kettle simmers on an open flame as an NCO brews bitter tea for anyone who wants it. You accept a cup, savoring the warmth on your numb fingers. It's a tiny comfort amid chaos, proof that small rituals can persist even when the world is crumbling. The tea tastes of ash and hope, if that makes sense. As dusk falls, the German advance grinds to a halt at the outskirts of Warsaw, marking the end of the first chapter of World War II. You lie on a wooden bench, body aching, mind reeling. The horizon burns crimson with distant fires, and somewhere beyond, sirens wail. Remembering that initial jolt of engines and the roar of Stukas, you realize this is only the beginning. The conflict you've stepped into will spread across continents, engulfing millions in its relentless grasp. But for tonight, in this shattered farmhouse, you cling to quiet victories, a hot cup of tea, the warmth of shared glances, the stubborn flame of human persistence. You'll need both for the long road ahead. You wake before dawn again, the taste of bitter tea still lingering as you lace up your boots. Today, you're not on the defensive in a muddy field, you're in the driver's seat of Hitler's method, Blitzkrieg. Literally lightning war, this tactic fused rapid tank thrusts, dive bomber terror, and shock infantry to overwhelm opponents before they could blink. You trudge toward a staging area where panzer divisions cluster like metallic wolves, engines idling, tracks hissing over gravel. It's early September, and you can almost hear the gears of history grinding alongside these machines. The mainstream fact is straightforward. Blitzkrieg first coalesced during the 1937 Spanish Civil War, where German-supplied Panzer IS and Ju-87 Stukas practiced combined arms warfare. By 1939, that brutal rehearsal turned into a full symphony of destruction on Polish soil. You climb into a tank's turret, the cramped interior smelling of diesel and grease. Your crew, sergeants with bone-deep gray eyes, joke about the Stuka's sirens sounding like squealing pigs. Dark humor, ancient coping. You grip the periscope handle, peeking through crosshairs at a lonely hill crest that, minutes ago, held Polish artillery. A sharp whistle splits the air, a formation of Messerschmitt Bf 109 Straf's village rooftops, knocking down chimneys and sending stunned crows into frantic circles. That's air power delivering the first blow, carving gaps in enemy lines. Then come the tanks, rolling in tight wedges, speed and coordination prioritized over heavy armor. Each platoon moves in unison, radioed by crackling fuck sets, targeting supply depots and command posts before infantry scrambles to support. You can practically taste the thrill. But there's a fringe tidbit. Some veterans swear that certain panzer crews painted tiny rabbit stencils on their hulls as a lucky charm against mines. Rabbits, of all things, symbolizing speed and fertility, sprinkled across steel beasts. You spot a faded silhouette on the side of a PZ-2, and can't help but crack a smile at wartime superstition. Even in the cold calculus of lightning war, soldiers crave talismans. Your tank lurches forward, engines roaring like mechanized lions. You remember that farmhouse you sheltered in last night, its kettle still smoldering in your mind. Now, villages vanish in days, sometimes hours, roads churned into mud, homes hollowed by explosive shells. Blitzkrieg isn't elegant, it's brutally efficient. You wonder how future generations will view these tactics, powerful innovation or moral abyss. Historians still argue whether Blitzkrieg's success depended more on German bravery or Allied unpreparedness. Some insist it was the Allies' failure to modernize doctrines, clinging to trench mentality, while others credit superior German radios and training. You're not here to adjudicate textbooks, you're here to survive, to test the theory of speed over solidity. A scream echoes behind you as a Panzer IV thunders over a buried anti-tank mine, jolting your stomach upward. The blast shears off a track, sending shards of metal into the morning haze. Your crew leaps out, scrambling to replace the track with practiced efficiency. You grab a lug wrench and join the scuffle, arms trembling against the weight. The noise is deafening, screech of metal, hiss of hydraulic jacks, shouts mixing with distant artillery cracks. You swap a rag for oil-stained gloves, recalling how the mechanic's wife back home said she'd never let her husband near a tank. Too hot, she'd laughed. Too loud. You told her, better loud than silent when the front arrives. 10 minutes later, the track is back on. The Panzer's turret swivels, glad to be whole again. You climb up, rallying your senses as if shaking off sleep. This is Blitzkrieg maintenance, speedy repairs to keep the Speerpunkt pressing forward. You kick the idling engine with satisfaction. Broken tanks don't win wars, working ones do. A burst of small arms fire rustles the grass beside the road. You duck low, hearing bullets ping off the turret like angry wasps. Polish snipers, fringe operators set to cling to trees, pick off unwary crews. Historians still debate whether these sharpshooters significantly slowed the advance or simply offered tales of personal heroism long after battlefields cooled. You search the tree line, firing tracer rounds into shadowy branches, heart pounding. The bullet's crack reminds you of a cracked vase, something delicate colliding with forceful steel. Your lieutenant orders yells and gestures, flank right, secure that crossroads. You move in tight formation, armored vehicles fanning out like hunting dogs. Behind the tanks, motorized infantry leap out, rifles at ready, cutting off doomed resistance pockets. The synergy is brutal poetry. Moments later, you hold that crossroads. Supply trucks rattle through, carrying fresh fuel and ammunition. Drivers wave, faces young and grim. You nod, tapping the side of your helmet. "We keep rolling," you murmur. Ahead, the road snakes toward a ridge where you'll pause, just a moment, to resupply before the next thrust. You recall the rabbit stencil on your tank. Maybe luck favors both speed and charm. The day's light slants low as you pause. On one embankment, a Polish soldier stands with arms raised, surrender. Your gunner levels the barrel but hesitates, eyes meeting those of the man who once loaded bread for his family. It's a quiet snapshot, human hesitancy in the face of mechanized efficiency. You lower the gun, motioning for him to step forward. He emerges, shaking, relief washing over his face like rain. You hand him a cigarette, the most expensive medicine in wartime. He offers a shaky grin, clasping your gloved hand. For a heartbeat, war feels like a series of human moments beneath the thunder of engines. Then the sun sinks, and you prepare to move again. Another village, another crossroads, another piece of the puzzle to secure. You can almost sense the momentum, unstoppable as a tidal wave. Speed, surprise, synchronized arms, the blitzkrieg formula laid bare. You climb back into your turret, heart still racing but mind oddly calm. Tomorrow morning, the cycle starts again. Reckon, tank charge, airstrike, infantry mop-up. Rinse, repeat, victory. History, you realize, often unfolds at machinery pace. Yet, inside these steel beasts and roaring engines, it's human courage, superstition, and split-second choices that truly steer the tide. You close your eyes briefly, murmuring, "Onward," as the tank jolts forward into dust-tinted haze. You wake to the distant moan of air raid sirens echoing off the chalk cliffs, each wail a brittle reminder that the skies above Britain have become battlefields. The morning air tastes faintly of salt and smog, drifting in across the channel. You trudge through the gravel paths of a coastal radar station, damp dew clinging to your boots as you pass rows of rudimentary huts. It's September 1940, and the Battle of Britain is raging overhead. Today, you step into the world of radar, an invisible guardian in the sky. Your feet crunch on crushed chalk as you approach the chain-home masts, towering steel pylons reaching 30 stories high. The mainstream fact: the chain-home radar network, operational by 1939, consisted of about 20 stations along England's southeast coast, scanning for incoming Luftwaffe formations up to 100 miles out at sea. Without these stations, the RAF would have been blind, literally watching German bombers drift unseen until they were over London. But thanks to radar, controllers in windowless bunkers could vector Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons straight into interception courses. It's wild to think, while you're shivering in woolen uniform, wires and aerials are doing the real watching. You duck into the operations room, a low-ceilinged cavern lit by flickering bulbs. Maps of British coastlines sprawl across tables, plastered with colored pins marking plotter reports. A switchboard crackles to life as plotters shout arrival times in clipped accents. 1 hour out, one murmurs. 2 raids at 48 degrees, another calls. The tension is thick enough to spread on toast. You grip the edge of the plotting table, heart thudding. This room feels like the nerve center of an organism electrified by anticipation. There's a fringe tidbit. Certain radar operators kept lucky mascots, tiny ceramic owls or toy airplanes, on their desks, convinced they improved detection accuracy. One story you've heard claims a station's detection reliability jumped by 10% after a visiting schoolgirl left a carved wooden cat by the antenna control. Whether it's pure superstition or smudged coincidence, no one dares remove the feline. In war, every edge counts, even a mythical one. You're led to a small chamber off to the side, where a jerry-built R1155 radio set buzzes with static. Push a button, and you hear the distant roar of Merlin engines and rat-a-tat of machine gun fire. Operators there liaise directly with Fighter Command, though the primary information comes from radar. You run your fingers over the dials, surprised how warm the metal feels. It's a tactile link to pilots above, furiously twisting throttle controls and praying their bits of glowing technology keep them alive. Outside, you catch a glimpse of a Spitfire gliding low past the cliffs, its elliptical wings slicing through the morning haze. You remember that farmhouse tea, its smoky sweetness still tickling the back of your throat, tiny comforts under larger threats. Radar and tea. Practicalities of modern war. Back in the bunker, you watch as plotters move colored markers to track incoming formations. Each colored disc shows altitude, heading, and type, Heinkel 111s scrawled in neat handwriting. A controller points at the map. Scramble 12 group, he orders. Vector them northwest of Dover. And just like that, orders crackle over radio, and you can almost hear Spitfires starting their climb through cloud-laced dawn. The swallowing roar of Spitfires overhead makes you step outside again. Above the pines, you see tiny silver dots, aircraft silhouetted against pale sky. You squint, toggling binoculars. A squadron of Messerschmitts cruises in tight formation. Soon, tracer streaks will dance between them and IAF defenders. This morning, the radar network will funnel dozens of fighters into the fray before the German pilots even spot Britain's green fields. A marvel of human invention, this network is often credited with saving the UK from invasion. Historians still argue whether radar alone won the Battle of Britain or if it simply brought enough warning for equally crucial factors, Spitfire performance, pilot skill, and German command missteps, to come into play. Some point out that radar coverage had gaps over East Anglia, letting certain bomber streams sneak through. Others counter that the Luftwaffe's strategic bombing focus on London, rather than airfields, gave the RAF breathing room. Either way, radar's impact remains a cornerstone of the story. You retreat to a small mess tent, gulping down a mug of scalding tea. The steam blurs your glasses, and you rub them clean. It's curious how the simplest comforts, from tea to biscuits, persist amid cutting-edge technology and life-or-death stakes. A private in greasy overalls jokes that the next upgrade will be radar-guided tea kettles, brews on time every time. You chuckle, though nerves still chatter. A sergeant beckons you outside again. Come see the latest unit. You follow him to a nearby field, where odd-looking trailers mark chain-home low-house short-range radar sets, tracking low-flying aircraft to fill gaps in the main network. These Yankee trailers are crucial. They catch glider-towing Heinkels skimming at 50 feet altitude. Without them, V-weapon delivery might have wreaked far more havoc. It's a reminder that even the best systems need reinforcements and improvisations. As midday haze drapes the coast, the plotters mark two large patches of red on their screens, enemy fighters engaging IAF Spitfires over Canterbury. You lift your binoculars again, spotting black crosses on tail fins. You imagine they're surprised pilots, expecting clear skies, only to be met by British Hawks tied to radar data. A Spitfire rips past, wingtip trailing white vapor. You salute the pilot's daring, wondering if he's just had his life saved by cold antennas and patient operators. Later, back in the operations room, a controller sends the last Spitfires home, fuel low, ammunition expended. You watch as green markers drift out to sea, joining blue homebound markers. The room exhales. Silence, brittle as frost, falls briefly before the next alert. You lean against a desk, voice hushed, contemplating the web of wires and radio waves keeping countless lives aloft. You glance at the ceramic cat perched by the radar screen and decide some superstitions are easier to swallow than technical memos. After all, in wars of such magnitude, even a lucky charm can feel like a companion. The sun dips lower, and crews begin rotations. New operators shuffle in, blinking at screens. You help plot the last raid, then step outside once more, breathing in the salt-tang breeze. Somewhere above, fighters return with victory or defeat etched on their wings. You marvel at how a handful of stations, cables, and determined personnel could tip scales in war. As you trudge back toward the farmhouse quarter, you reflect on the silent war beneath the roar, how human ingenuity turned unseen waves into guardians of the sky, saving a nation. And just maybe, sculpted your own place in history's radar sweep. You wipe grime from your brow, savor a final gulp of tea, and brace for tomorrow's sky. You slip through the morning fog onto the manicured lawns of Bletchley Park, the hush broken only by distant bird calls and the soft clack of your boots on gravel. Electric wires snake overhead, and you round a red brick building marked Hut 8, its door ajar like an invitation to history's most secretive tea party. This place, once a genteel country manor, now thrums with ceaseless activity, clerks shuffling sheets of paper, mathematicians muttering over chalk-dusted blackboards, and the hum of early computers ticking away at impossible problems. You can almost taste the tension in the damp air, laced with the scent of ink and stale tea. Your tour guide, a bespectacled woman with sharp eyes and a kindly smile, ushers you inside. The mainstream fact is simple. By mid-1940, the German Enigma cipher machines encrypted roughly 15 million naval messages each month, and Bletchley Park's codebreakers, numbering in the thousands, aimed to turn that unbreakable code into victory. You slip into a narrow corridor lined with desks, each piled high with sheets of typewriter paper and loops of punch tape. Women in tidy uniforms feed punched cards into clattering machines known as bombers, designed by Alan Turing to test vast combinations of Enigma settings. You follow cables to a clanking Heath Robinson prototype, wondering how wires and relays could outthink a Nazi U-boat captain ordering convoy attacks. You sit at a desk, finger a stack of intercepted cipher text, columns of random letters that somehow hold life or death instructions. A clerk offers you a fresh mug of tea. You cradle it, absorbing the warmth. It's comforting because the work here is anything but. Success meant saving thousands of Allied sailors. Without Bletchley's breakthroughs, the Battle of the Atlantic might have tipped in favor of the U-boats. Historians still argue whether ultra-intelligence shortened the war by 2 years or merely prevented defeat, but few dispute its crucial impact on Allied strategy. A fringe tidbit surfaces as you sip, a few codebreakers, perhaps inspired by wartime comic relief, war novelty Enigma decoder brooches shaped like miniature keys, pinned to their lapels. The exact origin is murky, and no official records mention them, but several veterans claim these cheery trinkets boosted morale on long, caffeine-fueled nights. You spot a tiny, tarnished key pinned to a corkboard above a young woman's workstation and can't help but smile at the absurdity of secret agents sporting souvenir jewelry amidst top-secret drills. Down a side corridor, you glimpse the Hut 6 offices where German Army and Air Force Enigma settings fell under scrutiny. Rows of charts map daily key changes, dozens of hand-cranked calculators well away, and one weary cryptanalyst doodles a cartoon U-boat proclaiming, "You'll never catch me." You lean closer as she muffles a laugh. In an otherwise iron-fisted war, even these analysts needed moments of levity. The guide leads you into the testery, a quieter section devoted to breaking the most complex messages. The room is a cathedral of concentration, wooden tables lit by green glass lamps, piles of cross-referenced logs, and the faint aroma of linseed oil from polished desks. Here, linguists and mathematicians collaborate, guessing common German phrases, spy code names, and cribbed weather reports to feed into their machines. You place a hand on one of the bombers, its metal skin still warm from operation. It ticks methodically, each revolution a search for the day's key. You can't help but marvel at the human determination behind these machines. One cryptanalyst told you that early on, they broke so many keys they ran out of paper for logs, forcing them to reuse sheets until ink stained everything a muddled gray. Whether that tale is embellishment or truth is unclear, but it captures the resourcefulness required in wartime. After all, printer paper shortages forced everyone from codebreakers to field medics to improvise constantly. In a small meeting room, senior officers pore over decrypted messages, deciding which to act on and which to quietly ignore to conceal the source. You watch as they debate orders received by submarines lurking in the North Atlantic, weighing lives saved against risks of exposing the Enigma secret. Whispered conversations echo in hushed tones, proof that even here, power was wielded behind closed doors. A major clears his throat and issues a directive: reroute convoy HX-73 away from U-boat wolfpacks. You imagine the relief on those merchant ships miles away, unaware their safe passage was plotted in this very room. Lunch arrives, cheese and cucumber sandwiches, cold stew, and more tea. You join a table where a handful of Wrens, Women's Royal Naval Service, explain their roles in punching hundreds of holes into reels of paper tape. They giggle about showing up officers with perfectly symmetrical punch jobs, only to have their colleagues painstakingly merge them without question. Even in the epic struggle of World War II, pride in craftsmanship found a niche. As afternoon light filters through sash windows, you find yourself in the Station X archives. Stacks of decrypted files, operation summaries, and black-taped reels line the walls. Each document is a testament to countless hours of code breaking that prevented bombers from reaching their targets or redirected convoys to safety. You run your finger along a ledger: operation drumbeat intercepted, location plotted. It feels like touching history. Outside, the hedges of Bletchley's gardens rustle in a gentle breeze. You step onto a gravel path and close your eyes, letting the hush of leaves replace the hum of machines. You hold your tea mug, now cold, and ponder how this spot helped steer the war's course. The irony is stark: a tranquil park became the fulcrum of a global conflict. You glance back at the manor house, its windows darkening, and marvel at the quiet heroes hidden within. Women and men, mathematicians and linguists, clerks and veterans, all united in cracking codes that saved lives. No parades, no monuments here. Just the slow, steady grind of human intellect, churning out keys to freedom. As you re-enter Hut 8 for afternoon shift, you feel a deep respect for these unsung champions. Through their work, encrypted words became whispers of salvation. And as the shadows lengthen over Bletchley's lawns, you carry their legacy forward, one fallen cipher at a time. You step out of the codebreaker's hush and into the bustle of a London morning, crisp air laced with the smell of coal smoke and damp pavement. The city feels quieter now, streetcars rattle, but fewer motorcars hum along the avenues. Everywhere you look, grocery shop windows display ration books, each coupon a precious ticket to sustenance. You cradle your own ration book in your hand, its thin pages more valuable than gold. Today, you're on the home front, learning how civilians survive on coupons, ingenuity, and a dash of stubborn cheer. Your first stop is the neighborhood grocer. You push open the door and greet the faint chime of a bell, its jangle echoing across empty shelves. The shelves are half bare, loaves of bread are strictly limited, butter gone by midday, sugar rationed down to 3 ounces a week. The mainstream fact: by 1942, Britain's Ministry of Food had imposed point-based rationing on meat, dairy, fats, and sweets to ensure fair distribution and prevent shortages from crippling morale. You exchange your ration book for a pair of sausages and a quarter pound of margarine, both luxuries earned through coupons and perseverance. You leave the shop clutching your modest haul and wander toward a communal make-do and mend display on the corner. A poster instructs citizens on how to lengthen skirt hems, darn socks, and turn old curtains into dresses, a reminder that wartime thrift was as much a fashion statement as a survival skill. You glance at your coat, its elbows patched with darker wool, and smile. You've already mastered the art of visible mending, those elegant X-shaped stitches becoming your own secret uniform. Lunchtime finds you in a neighbor's kitchen, a warm haven scented with simmering vegetables and the tang of pickled cabbage. You watch as she ladles out bowls of wool-ton pie, a quirky concoction of root vegetables, oatmeal, and a splash of gravy, a recipe devised by Lord Woolton himself to feed families on minimal points. The pie crust is thin, the filling earthy and hearty. You take a spoonful and are surprised by its comforting richness. Fringe tidbit: some families secretly added leftover bits of tinned ham or a dash of Marmite to boost flavor, hoping the food controllers never noticed. You nibble on a tiny square of salted rhubarb pie, an almost forgotten dessert born from rhubarb forced to grow under blackout curtains. Historians still argue whether rationing improved national health. Some studies point to lower obesity rates and better nutrition among children, while others suggest the poor suffered most, lacking resources to compensate for limited rations. For you, the question disappears with every bite. The pie is simply fuel against air raid anxieties and blacked-out nights. The afternoon sun filters through soot-streaked windows as you join a queue outside a mobile civil feed center. A cheerful wren, Women's Royal Naval Service, hands out a steaming cup of ersatz coffee, a dubious brew made from chicory or acorn beans. You sip, grimacing at the bitter tang, and laugh when the wren jokes, "Better than nothing, right?" It's a bitter comfort, exactly like the ration chocolate you traded coupons for last week. 3 little squares, each one a miraculous luxury. You wander into a basement community hall, where local volunteers run a collective kitchen. Here, ration books merge into communal pots. Peasants bring surplus potatoes, housewives contribute handfuls of barley. One older gentleman proudly stirs a vat of hodgy wodge, a barley and veg stew so thick you could stand a spoon in it. He claims it once saved his entire street from hunger. You scoop a spoonful, it's bland but filling, a testament to resourcefulness. Above the stove, a radio crackles with Churchill's voice, promising victory but not specifying when. You imagine him standing at the microphone, recasting wartime sacrifice as patriotic duty. Next to the stove, a young mother hums a lullaby, gently shushing her crying baby. The scene melds domestic tenderness with wartime grit, reminding you that battles were fought not only in bombed-out streets, but also in everyday kitchens. Later, you join an air raid warden on his patrol down narrow alleyways. He carries a megaphone and a rattle to warn of impending raids. He stops by a shelter entrance, where chalked messages on brick advise, "Bring warm blanket and no smoking, gas mask drills." You follow him inside, ducking under canvas sheets as children squirm on wooden benches. The smell of damp coats and boiled cabbage permeates the air. You sit next to an elderly woman knitting what looks like a tiny soldier's scarf. She smiles at you and adds, "Wool's you and rationed, you know, best we help the boys at the front." You tuck 2 balls of yarn under your arm, future gifts for distant soldiers. As dusk falls, you slip back onto the street. Blackout curtains are drawn tight, making each street lamp a forbidden beacon. You navigate by memory, the city transformed into shifting shadows. A distant wail signals an air raid siren. You hurry to a public shelter, joining a chorus of footsteps and nervous chatter. Inside, dozens of strangers huddle together, some cradle gas masks, others pass around remnants of stale bread. A man cracks a joke, "If Hitler gets in, at least we have company." The shelter creaks, and the lights, powered by hand-cranked generators, flicker. You press your ration book to your chest, thankful for that small paper bulwark against chaos. Some claim that communal shelters fostered a sense of unity that no propaganda could achieve. Historians still argue whether these moments of shared adversity forged post-war social cohesion or left lingering trauma, but tonight, solidarity glows brighter than any street lamp. When the all-clear sounds, you climb back onto the empty street. The night air feels cool and sharp. You head toward home, listening for the boom of anti-aircraft fire in the distance. Near your apartment, a group of children play under the dim glow of a single lantern, reenacting a bombing raid with toy planes, wooden models painted in vivid camouflage. You pause, remembering the toy airplanes at Bletchley and the rabbit stencils on panzers. Somehow, even in war, play persists. Back in your flat, you unzip your leather boots and hang your coat by the door. You brew a final cup of tea, the sweetness of a single sugar ration piece melting into the hot water. It's a tiny indulgence, a ritual that says, we endure. We adapt. We carry on. You sit by the window, staring out at silhouettes of bombed rooftops against the moonlit sky. Tonight, rationing is not just about food, it's about making do, finding creativity in scarcity, and forging shared resilience. You run your fingers over your ration book's creased pages, each coupon a marker of survival. You sigh, sipping your tea. Tomorrow, the grocer's shelves will refill with different quotas, kitchens will simmer new versions of wonton pie, and the radar operators will guide Spitfires over chalk cliffs once more. The war front lines may be distant, but here on the home front, you've learned that every coupon, every scrap of wool, every splash of Azart's coffee is part of a bigger fight. And with that thought warming you more than any margarine ever could, you settle beneath your blanket, ration book tucked beside you, heart steady as a well-pulled plug. Sleep awaits, ready to cradle you through another day of quiet heroism. You trudge through knee-deep mud under a slick canopy of palms, each front dripping with the morning's heavy rain. The air is thick, so thick it clings to your skin like wet cloth, humming with the buzz of mosquitoes and the distant growl of artillery. This is the Pacific Theater, where jungle warfare turns every footstep into a trial. You've left rhythmic ration kitchens and radar bunkers behind. Now, it's you, the mud, and the ever-present promise of a hidden sniper. Your boots squelch as you follow a narrow game trail carved out by earlier patrols. You taste salt and earth on your tongue, remnants of yesterday's soy sauce-tinged rations and the day's non-stop humidity. The mainstream fact is brutal yet mundane. In the jungles of Guadalcanal and Bougainville, more Allied troops succumb to disease, malaria, dengue fever, dysentery, than to enemy fire. Each step forward means gauging not just enemy gunfire but also the bite of leeches and the ache of fungus growing between your toes. You remember the pale green rabbit stencils painted on that PZ-2's flank, superstition that traveled from Europe's plains to Pacific islands, an odd talisman amid fern-choked landscapes. Out here, soldiers have new talismans, garlic cloves strung around your neck to ward off mosquitoes, or empty shell casings tucked into a sock for luck. Historians still argue whether such folk remedies truly reduced illness or merely eased the mind. But for you, spotting a string of hardened garlic bulbs dangling from your buddy's pack feels reassuring in a sea of uncertainty. As you ascend a ridge, the rain-slick rock buckles your posture. A crack echoes above, and you flatten against the slope. A Japanese sniper, hidden in a camouflaged pit, takes aim at your company's lieutenant. You can't see him, but you feel the bullet rip through the air and whistle past your ear. You bite back a curse, ASMR style. You note how the wind's tone changes right before impact, a subtle warning if you listen closely enough. Your squad mate, Corporal Morris, tosses you a crude wooden whistle carved from driftwood. "Made it myself," he whispers. "Blow it twice if you see trouble." You tuck it into your chest rig feeling absurdly childlike, yet strangely soothed. In a world of barbed traps and knotted vines, simple wood can feel like a lifeline. You push on, the jungle opening into a bombed-out clearing where the remains of an enemy pillbox smolder. Charred timber and twisted steel jut from the soil like the ribs of a drowned whale. You step lightly around a cluster of spent Japanese 7.7mm shells and drop to one knee. Nearby, Lieutenant's field surgeon drains water from a canteen and mixes it with powdered quinine tablets. Another fringe tip you've heard: quinate tablets taste like coal and regret, but they are better half-bitter than malaria. You form a perimeter while your commanding officer radios for reinforcements. The static crackles, and you hear the faintest murmur: advance to grid Delta 8 by dawn. You nod, imagining the rice cakes and stewed vegetables waiting at base camp, wondering how long it will be before you can taste something warm again. The rain subsides just enough to hear cicadas, like distant machine guns of nature. Their cicada chorus mixes oddly with the far-off rumble of naval guns pounding shorelines. You press your ear to the jungle floor, hearing life's constant insistence amid destruction. Ahead, a small group of islanders emerges, wearing patched uniforms and clutching wounded comrades. They are allied scouts from the Coast Watchers, guiding you through secret trails. You've read they helped rescue hundreds of downed airmen. Their silence is respectful, their eyes tired but steady. You exchange a curt nod, offering them half a chocolate mint bar from your ration pack. They receive it with a single bow, breaking the barrier of language with a smile. You continue to a concealed defensive line, where engineers improvise Molin's guns cobbled from aircraft engines and scrap metal, an ingenious weapon that spewed .50 caliber rounds at 30-degree angles. It's a reminder that improvisation is as lethal as organization here. You crouch behind a fallen palm trunk, feeling the damp bark press into your thigh as you peer through a slit toward the enemy's hillside foxholes. Rain starts again, dribbling onto your helmet and streaming down your face. You wipe droplets with the back of your hand, tasting salt, either your own sweat or the immediate aftermath of storm-laden clouds. Another shell erupts up the hill, kicking loose earth onto your shoulders. You grip your rifle stock, reminding yourself it weighs less than the 100-pound bombs raining onto distant carriers. A private next to you jokes, voice low, "I always wanted a beach vacation. This definitely counts." You crack a weary smile, grateful for the levity. He adds, "Just without the cocktails." You tap your helmet and whisper, "At least there's rum back at base." Suddenly, shouts rise as reinforcements arrive, fresh soldiers in olive drab, stirring the undergrowth into a frenzy. You exchange position reports, alerting them to snipers in the bamboo grove. They move in, rifles at the ready, pushing back enemy fire in a choreographed sweep. Mud splatters your boots as you rise and join the advance. Your squad moves uphill, bayonets fixed. A handful of enemy soldiers surrender. Fringe lore suggests some were so malnourished they mistook your C-ration biscuits for ambrosia. You offer them water and resolve to leave behind no cruelty unnecessary. Historians still argue whether this humane treatment improved prisoner cooperation or risked security. No time to resolve debates, you hand out water bottles as medics arrive. At the summit, you plant a makeshift flag, a torn rag on a bamboo pole, marking the position retaken. The vantage point offers a sweeping view of emerald jungle and blackened clearings. The smell of gunpowder drifts up the slope, tangled with vegetation. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing deeply to quell the adrenaline. Below, the Coast Watcher scouts signal passing PT boats to deliver supplies. You watch bright crates rattle ashore, promising fresh rations and replacement ammo. That piece of sensory relief, seeing crates of tinned fruit and spam, feels like a lifeline, a callback to the ration books lining London shop windows so long ago. It's a small stitch in the tapestry connecting homefront and frontline. As afternoon haze settles, orders come to consolidate the ridge and prepare for a new push toward enemy airstrips. You gather with your squad, checking weapons, swapping tales of rabbit-painted tanks and novelty decoder brooches for good luck. It's an odd camaraderie, superstitions passed along like precious relics. You sip the last drops of water from your canteen, pat your helmet, and steel yourself. Ahead lies more mud, more rain, more hidden foes. But you carry something deeper now, the knowledge that even in the sweltering crush of jungle warfare, human ingenuity, from Coast Watcher scouts to Molin's guns, shapes survival. And that a little garlic, a carved whistle, or a shared ration bar can become lifelines in the fog of war. You stand, shoulders squared, and step forward, knife bayonet glinting in filtered light. Onward into the green unknown. You trudge through snowdrifts that swallow your boots, each step a battle against the bitter Russian winter. The air is crisp, so crisp it cuts at your lungs like a serrated blade, while the wind whips across the plains outside Moscow, turning fur-lined collars into shields against frostbite. You're part of Operation Barbarossa's second act. German army stalled at Moscow's gates, pinned down by ice and mud that froze in place. You grip your rifle tighter, breath condensing in clouds before you, as you brace yourself for the Red Army's counterpunch. The mainstream fact is stark. By December 1941, temperatures around Moscow plunged to -30°C, rendering diesel engines useless, rubber tracks brittle, and infantry stuck in frozen trenches. German troops, heeled in summer tunics, found winter gear in painfully short supply. Innovations like the Isledovatel winter coat came too late. Meanwhile, Soviet soldiers, seasoned by bitter winters, donned padded telebreakers, felt boots called Valenki, and improvised fur balaclavas that turned faces into mummified sculptures. You tug your own fur-lined ushanka down over your ears, grateful for every shred of warmth. A fringe tidbit drifts through your frozen thoughts. Some Soviet regiments strapped pine branches to their helmets, believing the scent of pine would confuse German gas masks and hide their position. Whether it actually fooled panzer crews or just made troops smell like a Christmas tree is anyone's guess. Historians still argue whether such improvised camouflage had any real effect on combat outcomes, but that doesn't stop soldiers from placing tiny sprigs on their cap badges each morning. You spot a comrade with a scratch of evergreen peeking from his helmet and can't help but chuckle at the absurdity. You press on toward a log-built bunker, the wood frost-coated and groaning under the weight of snow. Inside, the furnace glows weakly, throwing dancing shadows on frost-encrusted walls. A squad of riflemen huddle nearby, warming their hands over mugs of tea made from foraged pine needles. The taste is resinous and vaguely medicinal, but it warms your core in ways that alcohol never could. A sergeant passes you a spoonful of kasha, bulgur porridge cooked in thin soup, its grains plump and sticky. It's simple fuel, but after hours of marching, each bite tastes like sustenance distilled by desperation. You recall the sight of German Panzer III stalled on the ice, tanks as useless as metal barns, their engines frozen solid, tracks jammed by compacted snow. Without spare antifreeze or winter lubricants, their crews watched helplessly as T-34s slid past them, firing rounds into vulnerable rear armor. That winter battle marked a turning point. Moscow would not fall. It was the Cold War before there was a Cold War. Outside, you join a detachment laying barbed wire traps in knee-high snow drifts. Each coil is a potential roadblock against German reconnaissance and tanks. The wire snaps taut against gloves rubbed raw from friction. You mumble a joke about the only thing sticking better than this wire is frostbite, and your mates laugh through chattering teeth. Humor, it seems, is as vital as ammunition in these conditions. A crackle from your comrade's radio breaks the lull. Tank brigade sighted, approaching from the northwest. You follow orders and man a Maxim machine gun, slick with frost around the barrel. Through the slit in the bunker, you see shapes emerging, gray silhouettes on treads, German panzers, their crews peering through frosty visors. You squeeze the trigger, the Maxim thunders, spitting a belt of rounds into the lead tank. Sparks fly against the ice-crusted hull. The tank slows, grinding to a halt as its inner workings freeze solid. The skirmish is brief but intense. Snow kicks up as the Germans scramble out, some sprinting back toward cover, others abandoning tank hatches open, steam rising like ghostly banners. You plant a flag, just a scrap of cloth pinned to your tripod, to mark the spot. Nearby, Soviet riflemen advance, rifles raised, leveling shots at retreating figures. It's a dance of survival, choreographed by freezing temperatures and steel-cold resolve. Late afternoon light filters through swirling snow around your bunker as orders come to withdraw to a secondary defensive line. You sling your rifle and trudge back, the crunch of your footsteps drowned by distant shell bursts. Behind you, faint voices sing Katyusha, the famous rocket launcher hymn, drawing a grim smile. Music, like humor, soothes the raw edges of war. You recall reading about Soviet ice campaigns where entire divisions trained on skis, weaving through pine forests to flank unsuspecting Germans. Snow-covered pines became natural cover, ski tracks left no tread patterns. Allied observers were astonished. How did they move so silently? Historians still debate whether ski brigades truly shifted the Barbarossa front or served more as morale boosters, but for you, the image of ski soldiers gliding past enemy lines feels undeniably poetic. Night descends, but not a tranquil one. The wind howls like a wounded beast, rattling shutters and sending snowdrifts pounding against wooden walls. You huddle with your unit around a small oil lamp, reading letters from home by its unreliable glow. Words from families half a world away spark tears from more than one hardened soldier. You pass around a tin of tin jam, another ration miracle, and spread it on hard biscuits. The sweetness bursts in your mouth like rebellion. In the dim glow, a political officer reminds everyone of Stalin's order number 227, not a step backward. The words hang heavy in the air, a reminder that retreat means execution. Yet here, retreat is survival. Each step back buys time to regroup, resupply, and counterattack. You wonder if history will label this stubborn doggedness heroism or folly. You secure your bunk for the night, tucking your rifle close and pulling your quilt over your chin. Frost crystals sparkle just outside, coating the window slats. You think of the German soldiers shivering in hollowed tanks, their kits lacking enough winter gear. This shared suffering across enemy lines feels strangely unifying. War is cold, war is cruel, but human will find warmth in solidarity, be it comrade or captured foe. Your eyes grow heavy as the wind rattles the bunker's roof. You whisper a thanks to that ersatz chamomile tea and the jam that tasted like hope. Outside, the Soviet trenches breathe clouds of steam, each one a promise to hold the line. Tomorrow, you'll wake to frost-laden air and the roar of guns once more. But for now, you embrace the cold, tuck your rifle under your arm, and drift toward sleep, warmed by Kasha's memory and the shared firelight of human resilience. The sun feels like a spotlight trained on your back as you trudge across windswept dunes outside Tobruk. Each grain of sand sticks to your sweaty skin, finding its way into every crevice, boots, uniform collar, even your water bottle cap. You can almost taste the grit with every breath. This is the North African Desert Campaign, where Rommel's Afrika Korps and Montgomery's 8th Army slug it out over nothing but heat, sand, and strategic oases. You limp beside a battered Stuart light tank, its olive green paint bleached by sun and scratched by drifting sand. The mainstream fact is blisteringly simple. From June 1940 to May 1943, Axis and Allied forces fought a seesaw battle across Libya and Egypt, with supply lines stretching over thousands of miles of inhospitable terrain. Control of ports like Tobruk meant fresh water and fuel, precious commodities in a place where both could vanish under a single sandstorm. You duck behind a drift of dunes as hurricanes roar overhead, escorting Whitley bombers hunting for hidden fuel depots. You wipe your brow, remembering those radar bunkers back in Britain. You'd thought a wet bonnet was uncomfortable. Here, the breeze is an illusion, and the horizon shimmers like a mirage. A sergeant next to you jokes, "If I wanted to roast this slowly, I'd just stay home and barbecue." You grin, though the idea of a beach barbecue in rubber boots seems absurd. Your orders come to scout ahead. You vault onto a Bren carrier, its engine wheezing under the oppressive heat. You grip the bar, peering through goggles as the vehicle lurches over uneven sand. Behind you, the rattling sprockets leave a faint trail, your own breadcrumb path in this sea of dunes. There's a fringe tidbit passed down among veterans. Some Italian soldiers kept tiny porcelain camels in their pockets, convinced they would guide them to hidden wells. Whether these trinkets ever led anyone to water or merely rattled comically in pockets is anyone's guess. Historians still argue whether such superstitions provided genuine morale boosts or just made the engineers laugh during long desert nights. You glance at the back of Corporal Ross's helmet, sure enough, a chipped camel figurine taped beneath his map pouch, and give him a thumbs up. You dismount at the remains of an old Ottoman well, its walls crumbling but faint trickles of brackish water seeping from the stones. A supply sergeant fills your canteen, warning you to tighten the cap. Sand can make a canteen pop open faster than grenades. You tip yours back gratefully, savoring the muddy tan. It's better than nothing, and perhaps that's precisely the point. Ahead, the outlines of Rommel's tanks appear, dark silhouettes against the blinding light. His nickname, the Desert Fox, was earned by outflanking British units along the coast road, using daring night maneuvers that felt part leopard, part poetry. Montgomery, in return, fortified El Alamein's ridges like a tent pinned against a gale, turning the hills into fortress lines that stopped the Axis tide. Your carrier kicks into reverse as Spitfires roar in, strafing a column of Panzer III slumbering through wadis. You lean out, scanning for tracer fire. Each streak in the sand could mean trouble. A Sherman tank nearby erupts in flame. You flinch, heart clenching. Then Corporal Rossi tosses you a stick of chewing gum. British, he grins. At least it's minty. You unwrap it and chew, marveling at how mint floods your senses, turning the desert into something vaguely like toothpaste. Supply shortages are constant. Petrol arrives in drums strapped to truck beds that creak and buckle under heat. One rumor holds that Rommel once ordered his troops to hunt desert foxes for their fat, believing it could lubricate tank gears. Whether those orders were ever followed or just another wild desert tale remains unclear. Historians still argue whether weather or supply failures played the larger role in Axis defeat, but for you, every empty drum is proof that logistics rule more than tactics. You trudge across a flat salt pan where your foot sinks into treacherous slurry before snapping free. The sun blanches the sky white, and you squint, realizing the British had it right when they painted their vehicles light sand color to blend in. The desert isn't one uniform hue, it's a kaleidoscope of dunes, scrub, and salt flats that can mesmerize and disorient in equal measure. As evening nears, you reach an abandoned wireless van. Its operator left in such haste that a cup of tea still sits on the dash, leaves spinning in dried condensation. You help yourself to a swig, grimacing at the stale flavor but tipping the cup back, hydration over taste, always. You place the cup back carefully, imagining the frantic messages once tapped out inside. Unit positions, fuel status, pleas for reinforcements. You set up a hasty perimeter beneath a rocky outcrop. Canned bully beef and hard biscuits become dinner for your squad. You joke about starting a desert cuisine channel if you make it home. Private Evans calls the beef medieval glob. but the peanut butter tucked in your pocket tastes like manna. He rolls his eyes. Next time, I'm smuggling chocolate. You grin, picturing a chocolate shortage that might actually end the war. Night falls quickly, and with it, the desert's temperature plunges. Frost gathers on your breath, turning your mustache into a handful of cotton. You hug your carrier's engine block, sharing its residual warmth. The stars above are impossibly bright, pinpricks of ice in the black sky. Somewhere beyond, Montgomery's artillery thunders, sending echoes across the sands. You unstrap Ross's porcelain camel and touch its chipped hump. Lead us true, you whisper. Maybe it's silly. Maybe not. In a war of machinery and mud, small charms can feel like threads to something human. You lie in your blanket, sand seeping through every fold, muscles aching but spirit intact. You think of the kasha that warmed you in Russia, the ration books back in London, and the radar station scanning dark skies. Now, it's sand and shells and stubborn will. Tomorrow, you'll push deeper into the desert, chasing both fear and hope across the dunes. You'll rely on compass bearings, overheard gossip from patrols, and perhaps a chipped camel for guidance. But tonight, under that vast, cold sky, you rest. You stand on the deck of a rusty merchant freighter, salt breeze whipping your hair as the endless ocean heaves beneath you. It's the lifeline of the Allies, the convoy system, where merchant ships sail in tight clusters, flanked by corvettes and destroyers, each hull pitched against rolling waves. You grip the cold rail, peering through binoculars for the telltale periscope wake that signals a German U-boat stalking just below the surface. U-boat, Unterseeboot, literally undersea boat, a deadly predator equipped with torpedoes that turned the Atlantic into a hunting ground. The mainstream fact: between 1939 and 1943, German wolfpacks sank over 2,700 Allied ships, claiming more than 14 million tons of shipping and nearly 30,000 seamen's lives. Without the convoy system, ships sailing in escorted groups, losses might have crippled Britain's supply lines, starving both soldiers and civilians. But convoys weren't impregnable. Every crossing meant scanning endless blue for a slender periscope silhouette and hoping the escort sonar picks it up first. You pat the hull's chilly steel and recall the muddy jungle and frosted bunkers. Here, the enemy isn't frostbite or leeches, but a silent hunter that strikes from beneath. A lookout shouts periscope, and a gaggle of sailors rush aft, eyes wide. You follow, heart pounding. There it is, a thin, grey column slicing through calm waters, almost shy, until it vanishes with a hiss. A destroyer's depth charge racks clatter as they rotate the ship to ram the spot. You watch the wake ripple outward like thrown stones. Suddenly, a rumble beneath the hull, an explosion, then another. The ship shudders and a plume of water jets skyward astern. A torpedo has struck the tanker behind you, sending thick black smoke across the convoy like a funeral flag. Sailors shout, scramble toward lifeboats, while others aim rifles at watery targets, hoping to shoot flotsam or German sailors popping up to rescue survivors. Amid the chaos, you grip the rail and search for meaning. The fringe tidbit floats through your mind. Some U-boat captains kept pet rats aboard, believing they sensed incoming depth charges before instruments could. These rats, cast from abandoned lab shipments, scurried nervously when a charge was dropped, warning crews to duck or tighten valves. Whether this rat sonar theory ever saved a boat or just made biologists proud is unclear. Historians still argue whether U-boats sank more by mechanical failure and crew fatigue or by Allied code-breaking and air patrols. But tonight, you're not thinking definitions, you're thinking survival. You step back as men in oilskins and life jackets leap overboard, their silhouettes bobbing among wooden crates and oil slick. You can't help but crack a dark joke: soup's on, for fish. A corporal next to you chides you for gallows humor, but you shrug. In war, even a grim quip can steady a wavering mind. The convoy's commodore, standing on the bridge with binoculars slung around his neck, orders zigzag course changes. These sharp turns disrupt targeting solutions, buying precious seconds. Depth charges echo again, 1, 2, 3, each detonated by sonar bearings, each one a hopeful prayer. You feel the tremor under your boots as if the ocean itself is coughing. A reconnaissance aircraft's engines whine overhead, a Cataline flying boat scanning for U-boats shadowing the convoy. Anytime the plane flies low, its prop wash churns white froth over the sea, possibly flushing subs deeper. Allied air cover is a critical lifeline, but always there's that moment of silence when the plane's engines cut out, and you hear only wind and water. You clutch the rail, anticipating a periscope or a torpedo wake. Nothing. Just your pulse hammering. Later, on deck rumble, you find a survivor clinging to a battered life raft. You help him aboard, a wiry engineer with salt-crusted beard, and offer a cup of weak tea. He sips gratefully. They came up starboard side, he rasps, voice rough as gravel. No warning. You slip him an extra biscuit, the last sweet morsel before the water claimed his ship. You notice he's wearing a small carved walrus tusk around his neck, another sea superstition, said to repel sharks. Whether sharks ever prowled these cold Atlantic paths or if the pendant just repelled superstitious officers is up for debate. But you tuck it into your pocket for luck. As dusk bleeds red into the horizon, the convoy reorganizes. Gathered ships form a tighter box, escorts patrolling outer lanes. You climb onto the bridge, shivering in wool and fatigue, sadness heavy in the salt air. The Commodore stands beside you, gazing at lifeboats trailing alongside. He murmurs, "Every crossing's a gamble." You nod, acutely aware that you're the croupier in a deadly card game, dealing fate with each convoy run. A sonar ping rings out from one of the corvettes, sharp, authoritative. The escort charges ahead, depth charges ready. You watch as the corvette's bow plunges under and re-emerges through foaming wake. Moments later, a muffled thud resonates. No plume this time, just a heavy silence. Maybe a U-boat crippled, forced to retreat. Maybe a false alarm. You'll never know. Night falls and the sea turns inky black. Stars gleam overhead but feel distant, remote, unmoved by the human tempest below. You huddle near the bridge's light, reading war orders in a yellow-tinged logbook. Tomorrow, you'll chart another course, outrun another hunt. You'll grow accustomed to the lullaby of sonar pings and depth-charge detonations echoing through steel hull. Historians still argue whether the convoy system, code-breaking of U-boat enigma, or sheer industrial might most turned the tide in the Battle of the Atlantic. The truth, you suspect, lies in the crucible of all three: technology, tactics, and tenacity woven together like netting on a submarine's conning tower. You step off the bridge and onto the lower deck, where medics attend to survivors, white bandages against dark uniforms, lit by swinging lights. The wounded men whisper of lifeboats crossing paths, of frosty waves below, of sung prayers for rescue. You slip a blanket around one shivering sailor, feeling the weight of every scrap of warmth. As midwatch approaches, you settle near a stack of spare life jackets and listen to the ocean's steady rhythm, swell, crash, sigh. You close your eyes, imagining the deep sea's calm beneath the chaos. The waves themselves seem to whisper, "Keep going." Behind you, the life rafts bob on the dark water, reminders that every soul saved is a small victory. You imagine tomorrow's dawn, another convoy leg, another sonar sweep, another fierce dance with unseen hunters. But for now, under the blanket of night and sea spray, you rest against the steel rail, rising and falling with the ship's breathing. The U-boats may lurk below, but on this upper deck, alive and alert, you defy the darkness with every heartbeat. You stand waist-deep in churning surf beneath a pre-dawn sky, salt spray stinging your cheeks. It's June 6, 1944, D-Day, and Normandy's beaches lie ahead, shadowed by fortified bluffs and pillboxes bristling with German machine guns. The Higgins boat pitching underfoot slows, engines throttling down, bow dropping open. The ramp splashes into frigid water, exposing a sandy stretch littered with barbed wire and steel hedgehogs. You plunge forward, boots sinking into the surf, rifle held high. The mainstream fact pounds like your racing heartbeat. Over 156,000 Allied troops stormed 5 beaches, Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword, in history's largest amphibious invasion. Operation Overlord aimed to break Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a massive system of coastal fortifications designed to repel such an assault. You're part of a force designed to breach that wall, and no, you won't survive this without serious grit and a good breakfast, neither of which seem likely now. Your boots grip shifting sand, shells whining overhead. You glance upward at men scrambling ashore, some leap clear, others topple as bullets cut through the waves. A dark joke surfaces among troops. Normandy was the world's worst tourist beach, no umbrellas or cocktails, just sand traps and angry locals with machine guns. Grim humor, perhaps, but the absurdity keeps your courage steady. You duck beneath a sand ridge, bullets smacking into dunes around you. A fringe tidbit you'd heard in training comes back. Some paratroopers jumped into France clutching rabbits' feet dyed red, believing the color brought luck and bravery. Historians still debate whether those charms provided any tangible morale boost, but in the terrifying surf and scream of gunfire, luck feels as real as gravity. You press on, hugging the wet sand until you reach barbed wire coils. Soldiers cluster near engineers planting Bangalore torpedoes, pipe explosives designed to clear paths. You watch sparks from detonators fizz in salt spray before a deafening blast shreds wire. Your ears ring, but adrenaline pushes you forward, crawling through newly made gaps. Above you, P-47 Thunderbolt strafe German positions, gunfire from wing-mounted cannons peppering concrete bunkers. You see one pillbox collapse under the relentless assault, smoke curling skyward. You're grateful to every pilot, imagining the view from above must look like a deadly ballet, choreographed chaos carving paths for your advance. The beach narrows as you reach a low seawall. You scramble upward, knees scraping on rough concrete. Here, you pause, panting, scanning fields beyond. Farmland stretching inland seems oddly peaceful, oblivious to the struggle at its gates. Historians still argue whether Germany's failure to swiftly reinforce Normandy's defenses stemmed from Hitler's disbelief that the invasion was real or due to Allied deception campaigns. Either way, this lull on the seawall gives precious seconds to regroup. Your sergeant gestures ahead, signaling you to clear trenches. You grip your rifle tighter and leap forward, plunging into sandy ditches zigzagging inland. Empty ammunition boxes and spent shells litter the trench floor, signs of desperate defense. Your heart pounds, your senses sharpen. You clear corners carefully, aware that danger waits around every turn. Nearby, a wounded soldier props himself against trench walls, grimacing as a medic bandages his leg. You pause, handing him your water canteen. He sips gratefully, eyes brightening slightly. Another tiny victory, human compassion amid violence. The sun rises higher, revealing smoking wreckage scattered across the beach. Tanks and jeeps offload from landing craft, tracks biting into sand, their engine growls a reassuring presence. You spot a Sherman tank emblazoned with the cartoon character Kilraw painted hastily, another odd morale booster. Kilraw was everywhere, etched onto walls, vehicles, ration tins, an Allied soldier's mascot whispering quiet encouragement. You touch your helmet, feeling oddly comforted by this tiny cartoon ally. Hours pass, and as midday approaches, you join a column marching inland, leaving behind the blood-soaked sand. Roadsides bloom with summer flowers, strangely untouched amid war's destruction. Birds chirp in hedgerows, nature oblivious to human turmoil. You find the contrast surreal but comforting, a reminder that life continues even through upheaval. At a makeshift field hospital, medics hurry about, distributing morphine and stitching wounds. The acrid smell of antiseptic mingles with smoke drifting from battlefields behind. A nurse hands you a ration bar, chocolate melting slightly in midday heat. It tastes like relief, a sweetness earned through hardship. In the village of St. Merglise, you stop briefly beneath a stone church where paratroopers landed disastrously earlier that morning, some tangled in trees, others dangling from rooftops. A local villager offers you homemade bread smeared with apple preserves, her eyes tired but kind. You accept, savoring flavors long forgotten amid canned rations. Historians still argue about the true significance of Allied deception in Operation Fortitude. Fake armies, inflatable tanks, ghost radio signals, intended to mislead German intelligence. Whether these ploys truly diluted German defenses remains uncertain, but today, any edge gained is precious. You continue inland toward hedgerow country, where tangled walls of foliage turn each advance into fierce close-quarters combat. Beside you, soldiers swap stories, rabbit's feet charms, beachside souvenirs, desperate battles against machine gun nests. Camaraderie grows from shared trials, bonds forged stronger than Normandy's concrete defenses. As evening settles, your unit halts beside a farmhouse orchard, trees laden with ripe apples. You pick one, biting into its crisp flesh. It tastes sweet, a tiny reminder of home. Soldiers stretch weary limbs beneath tree canopies, boots muddy, uniforms torn, but spirits unbroken. Night descends softly, stars emerge, peaceful points of light illuminating the sky. The roar of artillery recedes temporarily, giving way to the quiet murmurs of soldiers reminiscing about homes, loved ones, and simple dreams. You lie back beneath apple branches, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Sleep calls gently, promising rest after the longest day. Tomorrow will bring more battles, but tonight you savor small victories, friendship, fresh bread, apples plucked from French orchards. As your eyes close, Normandy's surf echoes faintly in your mind, waves whispering that courage lives not in fearless bravado but quiet persistence, step by careful step, trench by muddy trench. History will remember the grand events, but tonight you honor these small moments, human kindness amid war's chaos. You drift towards sleep, comforted by knowing that courage, like the sea itself, endures through every storm. You lace up boots designed for battle, only they are a shade too big, issued through the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, where you serve today as a radar operator. The morning air tastes cool and metallic in your mouth as you step under the archway of IAF Bomber Command's headquarters. All around, women in tan tunics stride with purpose, pilots in silk scarves, wrens in navy skirts, and WAAF technicians clutching clipboards filled with wiring diagrams. You're about to discover how women in uniform reshaped the war effort. The mainstream fact is clear. By 1943, over 600,000 British women served in the armed forces, filling roles from nursing and clerical work to ferry piloting and anti-aircraft operations. The Air Transport Auxiliary alone employed roughly 168 female pilots, many flying Spitfires and Hurricanes from factory to frontline squadrons. When male pilots were in short supply, these women answered the call, their hands steady on wooden control sticks, engines roaring like mechanical lions beneath them. You step into the operations room, an echo of Bletchley Park's hush, yet humming with curt commands and teleprinter clatter. A WAAF corporal taps her headset microphone, coordinating reconnaissance flights. You catch her badge glinting, WAAF 3133. You can't help but grin at the number, an odd badge of honor in a world built for men and munitions. A fringe tidbit drifts past your thoughts. Female wrens working on naval codes once informed colleagues that curling hair in a victory roll improved wireless reception. Whether the coiffure magically boosted signal strength or merely distracted tired sailors remains unclear, but you spot one youthfully coiffed radio operator adjusting her nodding beret with a smirk. Sometimes morale thrives on myth. You follow a corridor to the hangar, where ATA pilots prepare aircraft for morning sorties. A flight lieutenant, female, mid-20s, eyes bright with focus, leans against a gleaming Mosquito. These twin-engine beauties handle like dreamboats, she tells you, patting the fuselage. She's logged over 200 ferry hours, delivering planes between assembly plants and airfields. You imagine the bravery it takes to fly alone at dawn, no guns to return fire, only wits and instrument panels to guide you past enemy flak. Historians still argue whether women's wartime roles permanently altered gender norms or if they were swiftly relegated to domestic life after VE Day. Evidence shows 75% of female servicewomen returned to civilian chores by 1946, yet others point to the 1944 Education Act and post-war professional strides as legacies of that brief empowerment. In that hangar, though, definitions feel far away, what matters is who's courageous enough to taxi a bomber into the sky. You shift to a medical tent where Queen Alexandra's Imperial Military Nursing Service, QAMNS, nurses bustle about treating burn victims from D-Day landings. Their crisp white uniforms look impossibly bright against olive-drab tents. A matron hands you gauze and instructs you on applying sulfur dressings to a sailor's scorched hands. You taste antiseptic on your tongue and feel an odd pride mixing with adrenaline. This is frontline medicine, improvisation under canvas, a defiance of suffering with steady, gentle hands. The cadre of nurses share a tight camaraderie. One jokes that the only thing scarier than a shell blast is a male chaplain barging into the ward. Laughter ripples through linen curtains. Lighting is dim, but these women carry their own illumination, care, compassion, and a sense of duty that no blackout curtain can conceal. Next, you visit a group of code clerks, a team of women managing encrypted communications for the SOE, the Special Operations Executive. They type in fractured German on Enigma decrypts gleaned from Bletchley Park, translating messages that guide resistance fighters across Europe. Their fingers dance across keys with rhythmic precision, a tapping counterpoint to distant cannon fire. One clerk admits she kept a lucky thimble charm in her pocket. To stitch my way out of trouble, she quips. You tuck that metaphor into your mind, mending uniforms, mending codes, mending broken lines of communication. Outside, war reporters embed with female anti-aircraft crews at a coastal battery. You watch them man 3.7-inch guns, loading shells to detonate high-flying bombers. One sergeant, her face dusted with chalk from shell casings, waves you over. She shows how timing fuses to altitude creates a deadly umbrella of shrapnel. You feel the barrels heat against your palm, a stark reminder that power can be in precise control, not just brute force. Amidst these varied roles, there's a shared thread. Women stepped into spaces long closed to them. From cockpit to clinic, code room to gun emplacement, they knotted their uniforms tighter and proved they belong not just in history but at its very front lines. As twilight settles and sirens wail distant warnings of new raids, you gather with a small group of wrens around a portable gramophone in a bomb-proof shelter. They play Vera Lynn's "We'll Meet Again," voices rising in unison. You close your eyes, letting the melody wash over shivering limbs. It's a lullaby of hope, a promise to rebuild and return. You think of the radar stations that saved Britain, the jungles and snipers, the frozen Russian plains, the desert's mirage, the U-boat's silent menace, and the storm of Normandy's sands. Tonight, in this shelter lit by a single lamp, you honor a different battlefield, the one women marched into, altering roles and expectations with unwavering resolve. You lean against a sandbag wall, fingertips grazing your WAAF collar, and whisper a quiet thank you to every woman who traded civvies for camouflage, heels for hobnails, comfort for courage. Their legacy, debated by scholars, lives in each precise radio call, each stitched uniform badge, each lifeline given under fire. Tonight, as you settle into a narrow bunk and the shelter's hum lulls you, you carry their stories with you. Because in the tapestry of World War II, women in uniform embroidered threads of bravery that no retreat or defeat could unravel. You inhale, exhale, quiet as the cadence of Morse code, and drift toward a rest earned by hands that comforted, wings that soared, and hearts that refused to stand down. You emerge from the bunker into pale dawn, the air humming with possibility, and perhaps a touch of absurdity. Today, you're diving into strange wartime inventions, those curious contraptions dreamed up in desperation or brilliance, explosive bats, carrier pigeons, and more. It's a world where biology meets booby trap, and a squirrel might carry saboteur's tools. Ready your senses, and your sense of humor, for this inventive parade. Your first stop is a dusty testing range where the US Army experimented with bat bombs. The mainstream fact is startling. In 1942, Project X-ray armed Mexican free-tailed bats with tiny incendiary devices, then planned to release them over Japanese cities. Engineers loaded hundreds of bats into a converted bomber at dusk, intending the creatures to roost in eaves and ignite fires. In practice, handlers reported frantic bats biting technicians and roosting in light fixtures. Some even escaped and set a hangar ablaze prematurely. Historians still argue whether bat bombs ever stood a chance or were doomed by logistics and animal unpredictability, but the very concept remains a testament to wartime ingenuity run wild. Next, you're whisked to an IAF pigeon loft. Carrier pigeons flew microfilm containing maps, intelligence, and covert orders to resistance cells across occupied Europe. The mainstream fact: during D-Day, a homing pigeon named G.I. Joe flew over 20 miles in under 2 hours to deliver news of Allied advances, earning a medal for gallantry. A fringe tidbit: some pigeons wore tiny radio transmitter vests to track their return paths. Whether that improved mission success or merely burdened the birds is debated. Nevertheless, these feathered couriers provided a secure link when wireless transmissions risked interception. From the skies, you descend into a subterranean lab where scientists tinkered with explosive rats. The plan was to fill dead rats with plastique and leave them near German boiler rooms, hoping maintenance crews would dispose of them and trigger blasts. You examine preserved rat models lined up like grim ornaments. Despite successful test blasts, the project was shelved when saboteurs discovered the traps. Historians still debate whether this macabre concept ever posed a real threat or simply unnerved the Nazis with gruesome possibility. Back upstairs, you handle a sticky bomb Mk2, a glass sphere coated in adhesive, meant to stick to tank armor before detonation. British engineers taught Home Guard units to lob these bombs onto German vehicles. A fringe tale claims one soldier accidentally stuck his sticky bomb to a coffee mug and spent hours prying it off, scalding his hand in the process. Whether true or exaggerated, the story highlights both the weapon's ingenuity and its potential for mishap. Further down, you glimpse cycle sabotage units, bicycles rigged with timed grenades to ram rail lines or convoys. Field reports suggest a few successful runs, but most plans were abandoned after test riders found the bikes too unwieldy under heavy loads. Historians still argue whether such units ever saw combat or faded as fanciful footnotes, but their blueprints survive as curiosities of asymmetric warfare. Your final stop is a hangar showcasing carrier pigeon camouflage, miniature sandbags fitted to pigeon baskets, allowing birds to alight unnoticed on sandy beaches and dunes. A technician quips that the real challenge was convincing pigeons to land at all when they smelled suspiciously of floodlight grease. The camouflage contraption never saw wide use, perhaps a fortunate twist, sparing countless winged veterans additional stress. As you walk back through the parade of prototypes, you can't help but marvel at the creative extremes to which humans resort under pressure. From bats with bombs to rats that explode, these inventions blur the line between innovation and whimsy. Yet each idea sprang from a simple goal: gain any edge, no matter how outlandish, in a war of survival. Tonight, in the quiet calm of your billet, you'll recall these tales with a mix of disbelief and admiration. You'll wonder which gadget, if any, might have truly shifted the war's course, or if their greatest legacy is a reminder of human imagination's boundless reach, even amid chaos. You sip a final cup of tea, reflecting that in war's darkest hours, creativity becomes both weapon and solace, an emblem of hope that ingenuity can outlive destruction. You stroll into a dimly lit hall hung with rows of colorful posters, their bold graphics pulsing like silent drumbeats. This is the homefront's war effort, propaganda plastered from tube stations to Main Street. Today, you're decoding how cartoons and catchphrases shaped morale, duty, and even ration habits. You pause before "keep calm and carry on," its white text against red, a quiet promise amid blackout nights. The mainstream fact: in 1939, over 2 million copies were printed to fortify resolve. It's comforting to imagine casting one's eyes upward when bombs fell. Beside it, Uncle Sam's finger-pointing grin declares, "I want you for US Tank Corps." You almost expect him to wink. Some say recruits chose branches based on poster style, Air Force for romantics, tanks for mechanics, though historians still debate that claim. Clearly, design had sway. Nearby, a British poster urges "waste not, want not," featuring smiling fruits in Art Deco fonts. Rationing began January 1940, covering meat, sugar, and fats via point systems. These images tapped into shared sacrifice, nudging families toward communal kitchens and wool-ton pies without heavy-handed lectures. You drift to a Soviet call, "For the motherland." For Stalin. A stern soldier grips a bayonet beneath a hammer and sickle banner. A fringe detail claims artists hid tiny Stalin portraits in folds of uniform, an Easter egg for loyal viewers. Scholars still argue if such tricks deepen fanaticism or simply amused regime insiders. A US poster warns, "loose lips might sink ships," block letters over a sinking silhouette. You recall convoys buffeted by U-boats in Section 9. Casual chatter could feed wolf packs, so tighten your tongue. Simple, sharp advice that echoes decades later. At the hall center, a montage proclaims, "Your country needs YOU, work, fight, give," linking factory floors to front lines. Women from Section 11, pilots, wrens, nurses, are woven into its collage, proof that every citizen mattered. Management memos once praised these displays for boosting factory output, though the true metric was pride. You close in on a French resistance poster, Marianne's torchlight, urging "defend the Republic." Its Art Nouveau lines contrast stark wartime blocks, yet its call for solidarity transcended occupied zones. Some veterans swore that clandestine prints slipped past Vichy censors by hiding in loaves of bread, a story still debated for its daring flair. Finally, you see a U-boat hunt slogan, "Aid the Allied cause, spot and report submarines." A tiny periscope peaks above waves. It's a callback to radar networks in Section 3, reminding civilians that even a single sighting could reroute convoys to safety. As you exit, the poster's vivid hues blur into one message: art can rally nations. Each image, whether urging calm, enlistment, thrift, or vigilance, wove a tapestry of unity across bombed bricks and fuel shortages. Outside, the late sun casts long shadows on a brick courtyard, where once these posters flapped in wind and rain. They weren't just decorations, they were voices, calling everyone to play their part. You inhale deeply, carrying with you more than memories of clever designs. You carry proof that in history's darkest hours, a well-crafted slogan can light the way. You step onto a shattered boulevard in liberated Paris, August 1944, the Seine's ripples dancing beneath a pale sun. The air tastes of melting tarmac and fresh boulangerie bread, mingling in an improbable harmony. Debris, shattered shop windows, splintered signs, paints a portrait of occupation's twilight. You weave past cafes still bearing bullet-pocked walls, their interiors hushed beneath hastily draped tricolor flags. The mainstream fact: on August 25, de Gaulle's Free French and Leclerc's 2nd Armored Division drove the last German units from Paris, ending 4 years of occupation. Jeeps rattled along the Champs-Élysées, citizens showered soldiers with flowers, and La Marseillaise rose into the sky, a song long silenced now reborn as an anthem of freedom. Yet relief carries its own tensions. You notice makeshift curfews posted on lampposts, 23 to 5 o'clock, enforced by Allied MPs in sand-colored tunics. Liberation, some argue, brought swift purges of collaborators, raising questions about justice versus vengeance. Historians still debate whether these reprisals restored order or deepened wounds. A fringe tidbit warms your thoughts. In the final occupation days, Parisian stuffed shop mannequins in Wehrmacht uniforms, neatly posed with binoculars glued to their plastic faces. Whether these mannequins fooled any patrols or simply amused resistance cells remains uncertain, but their impish defiance speaks volumes. You follow a tram clattering past cafes awash in sunlight, where civilians taste victory rolls, flaky pastries dusted in sugar and cinnamon. You accept one, its warm sweetness a sudden reprieve, spurring a laugh as powdered sugar goes to your upper lip. It's small comfort after ration-starved months, yet in that moment, pastry feels like poetry. Near the prefecture, citizens queue to swap occup stamps for liber in their identity papers. An elderly woman quips, "I only bartered cigarettes for bread, not politics," and you sense the weight of personal reckonings beneath civility. The city cleans itself with whitewash crews scrubbing away graffiti, attempting to mask atrocities. Scholars still question whether removing those marks risked erasing history. You pause before a cinema marquee advertising Les Enfants du Paradis, shot clandestinely under occupation and set for triumphant post-liberation screenings. You promise yourself a seat, eager to witness ART's quiet rebellion. Along the riverbank, you see children swinging on seats wrought from shell casings, metal transformed into laughter. You kneel to touch a casing, its edges smoothed by hands that forged weapons, now reborn as playground fixtures. Nearby, a jazz trio, American trumpet, French piano, Canadian trombone, plays ragtime under a crumbling bridge, the notes curving around bombed facades like resilient whispers. At a makeshift market, stalls burst with peaches and cherries, fruits once too scarce for black market traders. A Canadian nurse beside you marvels at grapes selling for pennies instead of points, and you nod. Supply lines mend faster than fractured spirits. The afternoon light softens, and you drift into a bombed schoolhouse repurposed as a community center. Teachers stamp recovered textbooks with République Retro V inside covers, preparing to teach democracy alongside arithmetic. You recall the hush of IAF operations rooms in Section 3, the tension of learning and relearning life's lessons. As dusk falls, you join a gathering beneath the Eiffel Tower, its iron lace twinkling with festive bulbs. Soldiers, students, and survivors toast liberation with sips of sparkling wine passed in shared flutes. You clink glasses with a British major and a young French resistance fighter, voices merging in a chorus of à la victoire. You inhale the cool night air, tasting freedom's promise. Each breath carries echoes of radar pings, code-breaking triumphs, ration book lines, jungle and desert trials, frozen Russian fronts, Atlantic crossings, and Normandy storm-swept sands. All roads converged here, unbowed hearts standing tall amid ruin. You close your eyes, letting the Seine's gentle murmur guide you toward sleep, knowing that liberation's dawn demands both remembrance and resolve. The past may lie in fragments, but from these shards rise new chapters of hope. You rise with the dawn's first light, the horizon painted in pale apricot hues that promise another day of rebuilding. The Seine's gentle current glimmers below, carrying debris and dreams alike. Today, your final task is reflection, gathering the threads of every front you've visited and weaving them into a tapestry of remembrance and resolve. You begin at a makeshift memorial in a Parisian square, scattered flowers, handwritten notes, and flickering candles arranged around a battered helmet and a rifle propped upright. Names of fallen soldiers, civilians, and resistance fighters spill across paper strips taped to lamp posts. You kneel, tracing inked letters with your fingertips. The mainstream fact here is simple. By war's end, over 60 million people had perished, civilians and combatants entwined in conflict's brutal embrace. Each name represents a story cut short. A fringe tidbit surfaces. During D-Day commemorations, some veterans slipped letters to their lost comrades into crevices beneath cobblestones, private tributes meant to remain hidden until the earth yielded them in decades to come. Historians still debate how many such time capsule notes survived, but the idea of secret messages beneath streets you once stormed feels profoundly poetic. You stand and stroll toward the Louvre, where stained glass fragments from bombed churches were repurposed into a temporary mosaic, a testament to ART's ability to heal. You pause at a panel made of shattered French rose-tinted glass, killed and reborn as beauty. The symbolism stirs you. Destruction's fragments can become something new, a pattern emerging from chaos. Next, you visit a small orphanage in Montmartre where children who lost families in the Blitz or the Blitzkrieg now laugh beneath shattered roofs patched with blue tops. You crouch beside a group coloring chalk rainbows on crumbling walls. One girl draws a plane dripping flowers instead of bombs. You smile, her innocence forging hope amid ruins. A caretaker tells you these art sessions are therapy as much as play. Scholars still argue whether post-war art programs sped psychological recovery or served as propaganda for resilient images. You don't care, you see the children's laughter, and you believe in ART's gentle power. Your footsteps carry you to a railway siding once used to deport civilians to camps. Empty boxcars stand sentinel under overgrown vines, their doors chained shut. You place a single white rose in one open doorway. The mainstream fact: millions of innocents were transported in such cars, their voices swallowed by steel walls. A plaque nearby lists names of local residents never heard from again. You bow your head, imagining the courage needed simply to survive that journey. A historian's debate flickers in your mind. Some argue that remembering these sites fosters perpetual victimhood, while others insist they guard against erasure. You walk on, believing memory itself is neither curse nor cure, but compass. You reach a sunlit park named Place de la République, where a towering statue of Marianne surveys a modern crowd, families picnicking, students gathering, tourists snapping photos. The statue's outstretched sword now bears flowers, not war's steel. You join a circle of elders, veterans clasping hands and softly singing Le Chant des Partisans. Their voices, weathered, unwavering, rise and fall like tides, testaments that freedom's song endures. Ahead, a band begins the prelude to the Stars and Stripes Forever, a nod to Allied unity. You tap your foot to the ragtime rhythm, recalling the jazz trio by the riverbank. Across the square, you spot Union Jacks and Stars and Stripes fluttering together, improbable partners in a dance of victory and reconciliation. Your final stop is a small cafe terrace overlooking the place. You order an espresso, bitter, concentrated, perfect, and stir in a single sugar cube, a whisper of sweet. You lift the cup to your lips and sip, savoring a moment distilled by history's long and winding path. In this last hour, you reflect on the countless faces you've met: radar operators peering into night skies, codebreakers bent over ciphertext, ration cooks stirring communal pots, jungle scouts navigating monsoons, ski troopers flanking frozen tanks, desert scouts clutching camels' petals, convoy captains listening for sonar pings, beach invaders pressing inland, women in uniform redefining roles, inventors fashioning bat bombs and sticky explosives, civilians flinching at posters urging calm or vigilance, and Parisians painting mannequins in defiance. Each story is a thread. Together, they form the cloth of a world forever changed by conflict yet stitched back through courage, creativity, and compassion. As the espresso cup cools, you cradle it between both hands, feeling its warmth seep into your fingers. The cafe's clatter hums beside your heartbeat. Above, the late afternoon sky deepens. You inhale one last time, tasting tartelette crumbs and swirling smoke of distant grills. You stand, leave coins on the table, and step back onto cobblestones warmed by fading sun. Each footprint echoes a promise: to remember, to rebuild, to write new chapters not in blood but in shared humanity. You walk out of the square, Marianne's gaze following, forging a path from memory to tomorrow. Now, as twilight drapes itself over Paris's rooftops and the cafe chairs stand empty, it's time to let your thoughts settle, like petals drifting on the Seine. You've traveled from muddy trenches to iced yachtals, from jungle clearings to desert dunes, and finally to liberation's gentle glow. The world you walked through bore scars of conflict, yet every scar held seeds of renewal. Take a slow breath. Inhale freedom's quiet promise. Exhale the weight of wartime echoes. Feel the cobblestones beneath your feet, cool and solid, stones shaped by centuries of stories, now witness to your own. Imagine them cradle your footsteps, guiding you toward dawn's next promise. Tonight, let memory be your lullaby. Recall the hush of radar operators, the soft tap of codebreakers' keys, the rhythmic hum of bridging ships, the roar of engines on beaches, the hush of falling snow, the shimmer of dunes under endless skies, the laughter of children under broken walls, and the whisper of jazz by a riverside. Each detail, like a star in a vast sky, shapes your dreams. You're safe now, embraced by present calm. Outside, city lights wink like distant constellations, reminding you that history's darkness yields to human resilience. Allow your heartbeat to slow, matching the sane steady flow. Let gentle warmth bloom in your chest, coffee's memory, pastry's sweet echo, comrades' shared laughter, strangers' helping hands. These are the threads binding past to future. Close your eyes. In the hush, hear Marianne's soft song and Churchill's rallying cry, voices of courage carried on the night breeze. Rest, traveler. The battles of yesterday have shaped tomorrow's promise. Sleep in the gentle afterglow of remembrance, knowing that even when storms gather, hope's spark endures in every heart. Good night.